The perfectly symmetrical design is a phenomenon known as a crop circle. And it is just one of many strange patterns.
In 2025, something changed. For the first time, artificial intelligence was turned loose on decades of crop circle footage, and the results were unsettling. Patterns dismissed as hoaxes suddenly revealed impossible mathematical precision, fractals, and alignments so exact they connect modern formations to ones carved into English fields over 20 years ago. What AI uncovered points to intelligence, but not the kind we've been told to expect.
Crop circles are basically features, designs, illustrations of high complexity in crops.
And that's what makes this mystery more disturbing than tales of pranksters or little green men. But before we dive into what AI discovered, we need to understand how this all began. Why was the government watching from day one? The phenomenon emerges. If you trace the story of crop circles back far enough, you don't land in the 20th century. You land in 1678 with a woodcut called the Mowing Devil. It showed a horned figure carving a shape into a farmer's field after the farmer refused to pay fair wages. Historians dismiss it as folklore, but the idea stuck. Even then, people imagined that something not human could leave messages on the earth. Fast forward to the late 20th century. English fields began glowing with strange patterns, often appearing overnight. At first, they were small, playful circles. But within a decade, they escalated. By the late 1980s and early 1990s, formations stretched hundreds of feet, sprawling designs with mathematical precision, more like engineering blueprints than vandalism. Then came 1991. Two men, Doug Bauer and Dave Chorley, stepped forward. They admitted sneaking into fields at night with planks and rope, stamping out circles as a prank.
Experts are tonight divided over claims by two men from Hampshire that they're responsible for the South's famous crop circles. Dave Chorley and Doug Bauer.
Newspapers loved it. Skeptics said, "Case closed. Mystery solved." But here's the problem. Doug and Dave's method explained only the small, rough circles of the late 70s and early 80s. By the 90s, the designs had grown too complex. Fractals, straight lines spanning football fields, and astronomical alignments, all drawn in total darkness with no errors. Even skeptics admitted the confession didn't explain it all. And the timing? Doug and Dave confessed just as governments were ramping up surveillance of crop circles under something called Operation Blackbird. That was no coincidence. It was a strategy. Think about it. If you want to kill a mystery, you don't just deny it. You hand people a funny human explanation. Doug and Dave weren't real debunkers. They were decoys. Because while the press ran with the hoax story, scientists were finding evidence that couldn't be laughed off. The BLT research team, Burke, Levengood, and Talbot, studied plants and soils inside circles. What they found is still some of the most unsettling evidence today. Inside real formations, plant stems weren't broken by force. They were elongated and bent at 90 degrees, as if softened from within. Microscopic analysis showed nodes blown open, like the plants had been flash-boiled. Some soils contained magnetic particles fused into tiny spheres, proof of intense energy. These effects can be recreated with microwaves in a lab, but not in the middle of a field overnight, with no equipment, no scorch marks, and no footprints. This wasn't just art. It was physics. Picture this. On one side, a sloppy circle stamped out with rope. On the other hand, the Mandelbrot set, a perfect fractal hundreds of feet wide, appeared in 1991. One is graffiti, the other is geometry etched into the earth. And yet, the mainstream story stuck. Hoaxers made them all. End of discussion. But the evidence didn't vanish. Elongated stems, fused soils, magnetic dust. You can't fake molecular change. You can't hoax electromagnetic readings spread across acres. So, the question isn't whether some crop circles were hoaxes. Of course they were. People copy mysteries all the time. The real question is, what about the others? The 90% Doug and Dave couldn't explain? The ones that bent plants at the cellular level? That tripped instruments? That appeared without tracks in or out? And this is where Operation Blackbird returns. Officially, it was meant to catch pranksters in the act. High-tech cameras, military observation posts, everything aimed at the fields. But reports suggest it didn't just watch, it interfered. Some formations under surveillance looked staged. Others vanished from official records, which raises an unsettling possibility. Was the government only observing or also creating? Because if Doug and Dave were the cover story and BLT uncovered real anomalies, then who made the formations that broke the rules of biology and physics? And what if the very government operation meant to investigate crop circles was actually seeding them into the story? Not just watching, but orchestrating. And if that's true, what exactly were they trying to hide? The intelligence connection. By the summer of 1990, crop circles had grown from a rural oddity into a global mystery. And that's when Operation Blackbird launched. From July 23rd to August 12th, the Ministry of Defense allowed a team of researchers, led by Colin Andrews and Pat Delgado, to run round-the-clock surveillance in Wiltshire. This wasn't just a few cameras. Blackbird had military hardware, night vision, infrared, radar, all pointed at the fields beneath Silbury Hill, one of the oldest man-made mounds in Europe. The official mission: catch the hoaxers. But here's where things take a strange turn. Because in those 3 weeks, the cameras didn't catch pranksters with planks. They filmed orbs, small glowing balls darting and weaving across the fields before formations appeared. And almost immediately, that footage was sealed away. The public was told the operation was a bust. Nothing to see here. So let's pause. If Blackbird was only about exposing pranksters, why bring classified surveillance tech? And why did the most extraordinary footage, the orbs near Silbury Hill, vanish into vaults? Colin Andrews later admitted that Blackbird wasn't entirely his project. Behind the scenes, the Army had layered its own objectives on top. That meant 2 operations ran at once. The public version, with civilian researchers giving the appearance of transparency, and a shadow version, run by intelligence services, testing how people would react when certain formations appeared. And that opens the door to something bigger. Years later, a documentary called Mirage Men pulled the curtain back on how intelligence manipulates UFO and crop circle culture. In it, former Air Force Office of Special Investigations agent Richard Doty admitted to feeding false information to UFO researchers in the 1980s. His role wasn't just surveillance, it was disinformation, planting stories, staging evidence, and even convincing ordinary people they'd been contacted by aliens. Why? To confuse, distract, and sometimes cover up classified technology being tested in the skies. That's the pattern. Whenever mysteries threatened to get too close to something real, intelligence didn't just deny them. They seeded so many conflicting stories that nobody could tell fact from fiction. Operation Blackbird fits perfectly into that playbook. The public saw a failed mission. Insiders saw orbs and missing data. Meanwhile, sophisticated formations began appearing beside RAF bases in Wiltshire. Coincidence? Or strategic placement? It gets stranger. Around the same time, an art collective called the Circle Makers, led by John Lundberg, began claiming credit for elaborate designs. At first glance, it looked like harmless performance art, but later, whispers linked some members to MY5. Think about that. Intelligence agencies are backing artists in the very regions where real anomalies appeared. That's not art, it's narrative control. So when you connect the dots, Blackbird stops looking like a failed stakeout and starts looking like a dual operation. On one level, researchers like Andrews and Delgado were sincere, hoping to document unexplained phenomena. On the other hand, the Army and intelligence agencies used the setup to insert staged circles, muddy the waters, and test how the public and media responded. Maybe that was the goal all along, not solving the mystery, but controlling it, making it impossible to tell the difference between real anomalies and fake ones, until nobody could tell the difference. Because confusion itself is a weapon. And in the age of crop circles, intelligence wielded it with precision. So, here's the uncomfortable question. If governments planted designs in fields, filmed orbs, then locked away the tapes and funded artists to blur truth with fiction, what does that say about the parts of the mystery that remain unexplained? Were those the ones even they couldn't control? And that's where we turn next. Because while intelligence played games in the shadows, scientists studied the crops themselves. And what they found at the cellular level was something no plank, no prank, and no staged art project could ever fake. So if intelligence could fake the shapes, could they fake the science? Or did the plants themselves reveal something even Operation Blackbird couldn't cover up? The impossible evidence. What Operation Blackbird tried to bury, science quietly uncovered. And it starts with a man named Dr. William Levengood. Levengood wasn't a fringe enthusiast. He was a biophysicist who published in peer-reviewed journals. In the mid-1990s, he did what governments wouldn't. He tested the crops. Between 1994 and 1999, Levengood examined plants from more than 350 formations across 8 countries. That's not a handful of samples. That's a global data set. And the results? Impossible. Inside genuine formations, plants looked normal on the outside, but under a microscope, they were transformed. Their nodes, the joints along stems, were elongated, stretched as if softened from within. Many had expulsion cavities, tiny blowholes where internal moisture boiled and burst through the walls. To cause that kind of expansion instantly, you'd need heat around 1,500 degrees Celsius, hotter than molten lava, hotter than any prankster could generate overnight with planks and string. Levengood's team also found microscopic iron spherules fused into the soil. Imagine grains of sand coated with metallic beads no wider than a hair. These only form if the soil is briefly exposed to plasma-level temperatures. Yet, there were no burn marks, no scorch trails, and no sign of heavy machinery. Just standing crops bent into perfect designs, hiding molecular scars that pointed to the hand of physics itself. The seeds told another story. In the lab, many sprouted faster, with thicker roots and longer shoots than control samples, sometimes by 30 to 40%. A prank that boosts biology? That's not vandalism. That's controlled energy altering life itself. Levengood wasn't alone. Nancy Talbot, co-founder of the BLT research team, documented these anomalies for decades. England, the Netherlands, Canada, the US. The same effects kept repeating. Elongated nodes, blowholes, iron spherules, and enhanced growth. Too consistent to be a coincidence. Too complex for human trickery. And then came confirmation. Dutch physicist Dr. Eltjo Hasselhoff ran independent tests. His conclusion? Node elongation followed a precise gradient, as if plants had been blasted by a radiation point source hovering above the field. In other words, a directed energy beam.
And it is suggested that this increase in length is a result of heat. The nodes get warm, they expand, it's a thermal expansion, and they remain long afterwards.
His work, like Levengood's, was peer-reviewed. Not speculation. Science. There's more. Many circles coincided with sudden temperature drops and electromagnetic surges. Cameras failed. Batteries drained. Visitors felt dizzy or euphoric. We're not just talking about art in fields. We're talking about localized energy fields that disrupt both machines and people. So, let's pull this together. Hundreds of formations, microscopic anomalies, plasma heat, enhanced seeds, and electromagnetic spikes, all pointing to one thing: crop circles are not just art. They're physical events leaving evidence no hoax could fake. If the science is this strong, then why was it ignored? This takes us to 2025, when AI analyzed decades of data. What message did it uncover? The AI revelation. By 2025, the mystery of crop circles had already been weighed, measured, and dismissed 100 times by skeptics. But that year, something different happened. Quantum-trained artificial intelligence was given the entire archive, thousands of documented formations spanning decades, not just photos, but aerial footage, plant samples, and construction overlays. The machine wasn't told what to look for. It simply searched for patterns across time. What it found surprised even the scientists who had stopped believing long ago. The AI found connections that no human could have seen. Take the Bavarian Formation of 2025. At first, it seemed like something new, just another beautiful geometric pattern cut into the fields. But when the AI compared its structure to the archives, it found something that no human researcher had ever seen. This 2025 circle wasn't original. It was a fusion. Two separate designs that had appeared 20 years earlier in England, in 2005, were combined seamlessly into one. The alignments weren't approximate. They were mathematically precise, down to the millimeter. That kind of planning would require a human team not only to perfectly preserve designs from decades earlier, but also to forecast their recombination in the future. Imagine that. A group of hoaxers in 2005 made circles so exact that, 20 years later, they could be woven into a Bavarian field with flawless symmetry. That isn't just unlikely, it's impossible. And the AI didn't stop there. It detected something our eyes couldn't. Construction lines hidden within the geometry. Faint alignments only visible when the machine enhanced the images. Lines invisible to the naked eye but critical to the layout. It was like peeling back the skin of a painting and seeing the artist's first strokes, the skeleton beneath the masterpiece. No plank, no rope, no team of pranksters working in the dark could ever leave invisible guiding marks that show up only under machine pattern recognition. Then came the most chilling discovery. The plants in the Bavarian Formation weren't bent at random angles. They were folded at exactly 51 degrees. Every stalk is uniform, as if guided by a force working at the molecular level. The AI confirmed the angle across thousands of samples, with a variance so tight it ruled out human error. This wasn't vandalism in a wheat field. This was engineering. And when the AI broadened its research to include the entire dataset, it discovered something even stranger: recurring mathematical patterns for years. Ratios in Wiltshire circles from 1990 emerged in Dutch forms in 2010, then appeared again in the Bavarian pattern of 2025. These were not just coincidences. They were sequences, like notes in a song playing across time. A 20-year rhythm hiding in plain sight. Think about what that means. Either pranksters across continents, separated by decades, somehow coordinated their work with impossible precision. Or we're looking at a long-term design written by something far beyond the reach of weekend hoaxers. And here's where it gets truly unsettling. The AI suggested that these ratios weren't just pretty math. They carried information, encoded relationships, repeating at intervals, point to a coordinated effort across time. It wasn't one-off formations. It was a sequence, a message unfolding slowly, across decades, like someone leaving breadcrumbs through history for us to follow. Only once our machines were advanced enough to recognize them. Now picture this on screen. The 2025 Bavarian design dissolving into two separate 2005 English circles, perfectly overlapping. The alignments glowing as AI draws the invisible construction lines we were never meant to see. Then, the 51-degree stalk angles were revealed in lab footage, overlaying the machine's data points. It feels less like art and more like architecture, a blueprint. So, here's the question. If the AI could see decades-long planning that no human ever noticed, what does that mean about who or what made these designs? Were they left for us to find only when our technology was ready? Because the AI's revelations point to one terrifying conclusion. This isn't random. It's coordinated. And if that's true, then the next question matters more than any we've asked so far. What's the purpose behind this decades-long operation? Why has someone, or something, been leaving us a message written in the language of crops for over 40 years? The intelligence inception twist. The AI revelation gave us one truth, that crop circles were too precise, too coordinated, and too impossibly engineered to be explained away as midnight pranks. But here's the twist most people never saw coming. Crop circles weren't just about geometry in fields, they were a training ground, a beta test. And the subject wasn't physics or aliens. It was us. Because when intelligence agencies realized they couldn't stop the phenomenon, they did something far more effective. They studied the reaction. Imagine this. Mysterious symbols show up overnight in English wheat. And suddenly, you've got believers on one side, convinced of otherworldly contact, and skeptics on the other, dismissing it as teenage vandalism. That divide wasn't an accident. It was engineered. Psychological warfare works by planting uncertainty. Give the public just enough evidence to wonder, but never enough to conclude. Crop circles were perfect for that. They let agencies test how populations respond to mystery. Feed one group dazzling aerial photos, slip another group stories of two old men with planks. Then sit back and watch society fracture into camps. The believer versus skeptic war became the experiment. And the hoaxers everyone remembers? Many weren't random pranksters at all. They were controlled opposition, rolled out at just the right moment to confess and close the case. But those confessions never accounted for the microscopic plant changes, the iron spherules, or the electromagnetic anomalies. That was the point, to keep the mystery alive, but unsolvable. Enough evidence to keep you curious. Enough doubt to keep you divided. What's chilling is how familiar this feels today. Think about it. The crop circle era ended right as the internet era began. The same agencies that once tested mass psychology with formations in fields now test it with stories in feeds. Instead of wheat patterns, it's trending hashtags. Instead of hoaxers, it's bots and trolls. The plan is still the same. Divide populations, control narratives, and make it hard to tell the difference between facts and fiction so that no one believes anything. And this brings us to a troubling discovery. If crop circles were the beta test, then what we're seeing now is the full launch. A full launch of psychological warfare on a global stage, which raises the question, if mysteries can be manufactured and belief can be engineered, how much of our reality is truly ours? Because now that we know the truth, the question becomes, what other mysteries are actually manufactured for our consumption? If crop circles were a test run for controlling belief, what other mysteries around UFOs, hidden tech, or government cover-ups are being engineered right now? Did you know studies suggest nearly 70% of online narratives are shaped by deliberate manipulation? Question everything. Could today's viral mystery be tomorrow's experiment? Tell us your thoughts in the comment section below. And don't forget to subscribe for more hidden truth breakdowns.